Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. If you're still looking for a seat, the front row is not reserved. Those are the nicest seats, the best view, the most comfortable, but sometimes people don't sit there. I don't know why. Yeah, open seats in the front row still if you guys want to jump in there. Open seatings, nothing's reserved here. Thank you so much for being here. LinkedIn live stream, we appreciate your attendance as well. Thank you very much. My name is Jackson, I'll be your host. I'm also one of the organizers of AI User Group. This is AI for Developers. AI User Group is a community of professional marketers, designers, and developers interested in the latest AI tools and workflows and how they apply to our professional day-to-day. We host 3 events: AI for Developers, AI for Marketers, and AI for Designers. Before we get started, a few announcements from me. The agenda for tonight: first we'll hear from Nick, then we'll hear from Ron, then we'll hear from Ulric at 8 o'clock. If you want to prepare a quick open mic pitch, you can stand exactly where I'm standing, and we'll do open mic. The live stream will be here too for 5 minutes to kick off networking. And we'll do networking from 8:05 to 8:50 and have some pizza, and doors close at 8:50. So that's what we're gonna do. One other announcement, we are hiring a sponsorship sales representative. So if you're interested in this role, or you know anyone who might be interested in this role, please come chat with me, or you can also email Eileen at bemyapp.com. So yeah, we're hiring a sponsorship sales rep. So let us know. I think with that, we should get started. Let's hear from our first speaker, Nick Battjes.
Nailed it.
Woo. CTO of Valquery. Title of Nick's talk is Backwards Rag, Building a GAR app with Valquery. Here is Nick.
Hello. Everyone hear me okay? Thank you all so much for coming. Let's give a big round of applause for Jackson and Cyril and everybody at AIUG too. These events are really awesome. I love them so much. Been to quite a few of these before, including their big conference in January, and I've just learned a lot. And I'm very excited to be on this side of the table finally, and hopefully giving something back to all of y'all. So this is my talk. It's called Backwards Rag, Building a GAR app. I actually just changed the title last minute, but here we go. A little bit about me before we get started. My name is Nick Battjes, as we covered. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Valquery. My other co-founder and best friend since middle school is Pete. He's in the audience there. Pete, give a wave. There he is. You can go talk to him during networking time. Before we started this company, I had spent my whole career in e-commerce, mostly working on Salesforce Commerce Cloud. Any Commerce Cloud fans in the house? No? Good, it's bad. And then towards the end, I actually got into a niche moving people off of Commerce Cloud onto more modern composable headless architectures, mostly doing the Next.js like front-end parts of that. And that was what ultimately gave me the skill set we needed to do Valquery. A couple of fun facts. I like Dango a lot, those dumplings that I'm eating in the picture there. I know several things about analytics now, having been in the space for almost a year, but definitely go to Pete with those questions before you come to me. And I used to host video game pub trivia nights. So if you have any interest in giving me a venue to do that, I have about 400 slides of video game trivia kicking around. Especially if you're willing to pay me to do it, then let's talk during networking time. I think we can work something out. All right, that's enough about me. Let's talk about RAG. So we won't spend too much time on RAG because most of you, I imagine, have been to one of these events before, and you have heard probably 17 different explanations of how RAG works. It makes me cringe every time I hear the name too, because it makes me think about RAGs. I will quickly go over it just in case we have any people who are new to RAG. It's short for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's basically a process by which you can use a corpus of some specific information to improve the quality of LLM results. It's got 2 parts. It's got an intake flow. You have some sort of data sources. You get sweet data out of those through some sort of data process, which converts it into chunks of sort of short, cogent natural language, which you can then run through an embedding model and generate embeddings off of, and then store in a vector database. So that when a user has a query, goes through your front end, That query can go through the same embedding model, get converted into vectors, and those can be used to do a vector search against your corpus and then return some relevant results, which will go to the LLM along with the query and be used to hopefully improve the quality of the response that the LLM generates and then sends back to the user. I put text in there. Of course, we live in a multimodal world now, so it could be video, it could be a picture of a scary cat, it could be whatever. But that's enough about RAG. We're here to talk about GAR. So the story of GAR, I struggled for a long time to really come up with a good technical summary of what Valquery does. I learned the term RAG while we had already been working on it for a while, and I knew that wasn't it, but it was close. And it was actually at AIUG conference in January. I was just in the lounge upstairs kind of ruminating, and it came to me. It's not RAG, it's GAR. Which I messaged Pete after I found out the name. I was very excited, and he was like, "You mean this little fish?" And I was like, "No." It turns out there is a freshwater fish native to North America with poisonous roe that is also called the GAR. So don't eat their eggs. But let's talk about what GAR is in our context here. Generation augmented retrieval. It's very similar to RAG. It actually includes every element from the original graphic. There's just a couple extra things at the end. All of the data intake is the same, except that when the user gets all the way through their query going to the vector database and then into the LLM, we ask the LLM, is this information enough information to come up with a good answer to their query? If it is, we send it on, but we send the search results and the generative response right on back. If it's not, we get a follow-up question and go back into the database and get more search results and go round and round until we have enough to answer the question. So we're asking the LLM to rely on the search results to answer the question, rather than relying on its sort of inherent capabilities. Because the point here is really not to deliver an LLM response, or it's not to use search to improve an LLM response, it's to use an LLM response to improve search. Thus, generation-assisted augmented retrieval. I always say assisted for some reason, instead of retrieval-augmented generation. Now, why do we need to do this? Let's talk about Valquery. So the jumping-off point for Valquery was that Pete, who has spent his whole career, or most of his career, in data analytics, came to me and said, fundamentally, data warehouses have too much data. So we can't find anything in the data warehouse. Every time we go to answer a question, we go root around through the thousands of tables trying to find which of the 17 orders tables is the one we need to answer our question about orders. And ultimately, we can't find exactly what we need, so we make another orders table that does do exactly what we need. And every time we do that, we've made the problem worse. And what about documentation, you may say? This is a room full of developers. What's the first thing you stop doing once you start getting busy at work? Writing documentation, yes, there we go. You probably won't start again until you've already put in your 2 weeks notice so you don't have any more tickets. At least that's how it went for me at my last job. So how are we gonna solve this problem? And even if you are doing good documentation, you're spending a lot of time writing that documentation that could be spent doing things that have a much higher ROI. So we had a sort of realization that technical teams, including analytics teams, generate so much text about the work that they're doing while they're just doing their work. Not while they're doing bespoke documentation. They write tickets. They make comments in code. They do, in fact, write documentation, and why wouldn't we harness it? They chat with each other on Slack. This is all natural language text that's about the data resources that they need to answer their questions. So we thought, what if we could figure out a way to harness all of that just already existing ambient contextual information to enable people to search for data resources to answer their questions. I promise there's only one more slide, then we're going to go to the actual demo. So I just wanted to get this part out first. It was really the important part. So we pretty quickly came upon two fundamental elements that came to define Valquery: references and results. References are those little pieces of contextual data, such as code comments, PR discussions, tickets, documentation, that we will be doing our search against. And then results are resources in the data warehouse that are what the analyst is actually looking for. So the problem we had to solve was how do you search against the one on the left and find the one on the right? And that's what we'll talk about now. So enough of slides. Let's go over to Valquery. Can you guys read this okay? Do I need to make it bigger? Perfect. All right, I'm going to sip of my water too since it's transition time. Make it bigger. Enhance. Enhance. Is that enhanced enough? All right, it might mess with the spacing a little bit on my UI elements, so you are responsible, guy in the back who yelled make it bigger. All right, let's go ahead and put in a query. So as you can see, the UI is pretty simple. It's an iceberg product. There's a tiny front end and a great big back end. I actually just realized this today. The UI kind of looks like an iceberg too. There's like a little bit of white on the top and then a big blue ocean below. That was not on purpose, but it works out. All right, so let's just start with, these are our search suggestions that Pete very much came up with. I had been asking it like existential things about the nature of God or whatever, and that he came up with good analytics questions. So let's try, what is our average contract value? Now this is going to take a minute because there's quite a bit happening here. We have to do potentially multiple loops of doing vector search, having OpenAI, we use ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo to come up with responses, and then also talking to Snowflake. But at the end, here we go. We've got, this is the cumulative response that sort of explains how you can use all of the results together to answer your question, and these are the results. So we're going to talk through the anatomy of a result real quick. So we have a resource identifier, database schema table. This is the actual data resource, or these are the actual data resources that will hopefully answer your question. We can pop down and see a little bit of sample data here. I actually wound up having to use, I used OpenAI to generate the column names and then had to do just like some bespoke proc gen for the values because OpenAI just refused to put in the right SQL data formats in the rows. I spent like 2 days on it before I gave up and just wrote my own proc gen. So that's why we have lorem ipsum for these. So yeah, that sample data is also going to be used is also used in the follow-up flow and in the explain button, which we've got over here, which will give you a more detailed, yeah, you see it messed up the spacing. Which will give you a more detailed explanation of how you can use just that table to answer your question. And it also enabled me to keep this thing a little shorter because if you want more detailed information, you can just drill down into this thing. Because once I made this have a lot of tokens, it slowed down quite a bit. Actually, funny story, until I think December or January, this was the whole app. It would just be 2 results and the explain button, and that was it. And then Pete was really the one who had the epiphany where he was like, that led to GAR, where it was like, okay, why don't we use the LLM to improve the search results and have it come up with follow-up questions and decide when there's enough results. And that was really what kicked this thing into high gear, I feel like. So last thing we've got here is, of course, references. They, in our context, really come in 2 flavors. There's either Git or Notion references. We had plans of building out many, many more. There's obviously dozens and dozens of places you could potentially get these. There's your Jira, your Confluence, your Slack, your Teams, your Bitbucket. Does anyone use Bitbucket? Any Bitbucket fans in the house? We got one, literally one Bitbucket man in the pack. I had to use it at a client for a while. So yeah, let's drill into what these references look like. So I'm going to pop over to our logs here. All right, beautiful. This, I imagine, is pretty hard to read. Can you guys see this? Okay, let's try to make it a little bigger. Enhance. Enhance. Too much enhancing. All right. So let's go ahead and drill into one of these. I have my saved queries over here. Let's pick a table. Let's start with the Git results, or Git references, because they're a little easier to talk through. So let's get. Bear with me while I put this in. Marked available to renew. Marty. Oh, did I misspell something? Snowflake? Oh, is it not in prod database? No, prod database, restricted safe, common mark finance. Oh, finance. What? This is my worst nightmare that this would not work when I went to demo time. Where? Yeah. Restricted safe, common mark finance. What was it? I should save common mart finance. Yes. I should just copy paste this. I don't know why I try to type anything. I've got stupid fingers. Hey, thank you. Thank you. That was a solid. I'll buy you a drink after the show. All right, so let's go ahead and so these are all of the references to that. So let's go ahead and find, this is actually more of them than I thought there would be. Okay, yeah, let's filter by source too. Let's do this. All right, so here we can see what we're actually dealing with here. We decided not to surface the content of the references pretty early on for a couple of reasons. We thought it'd be data overload, first of all. Like, you're gonna be reading through all these little snippets. You don't really care what the snippets are. You care what the results are. So, and it would look kind of gross in the UI. Also, we thought there would be some sticky implications when we got into the chat part of it. You could be surfacing chat messages from executives that they might not want you to see. Who knows what the vector search is going to think is related? There could be unsavory things. Who knows? Once you get into chat, it all gets messy. That's why we haven't done chat yet. But anyway, let's go ahead and see where this comes from. So this is going to be union of all charges, and it's going to be in Mart available to renew. So is anyone here familiar with DBT? Couple DBT fans in the house. Pete, you better have your damn hand up. Okay, yes. So DBT was really the jumping off point for this whole project. It's a very cool, it's a basically the transform part of an ETL as code. So you have a repository that defines each view as a SQL file, and then you can run that periodically, either from the CLI or they have a cloud offering as well. And it will just go through your whole DAG and regenerate everything based on that repo. And what that enabled us to do also was, oh, this is snapshots. I need, where's the other one? Oh, yeah, big shout out to GitLab. We could not have done this project without GitLab because GitLab was awesome and made their whole very mature DBT repo available under the MIT license. So we were just able to develop against that. And their documentation hub for their analytics team is also public. So it was really invaluable for us because we very early on realized that even with LLM tools, it's nigh on impossible to not just generate a replica of like a mature company's data warehouse, but to generate a years-long history of conversations about that data warehouse across multiple tools. We tried, and it didn't work. So this was really invaluable to us. Big shout out to GitLab. Let's give them a round of applause. Beautiful tool. I actually like it more than GitHub now. I had never used it before this, but their API limits are much more generous. I had to put in a queue system just because GitHub was so stingy with me when I was trying to pull data from it. Anyway, so the way DBT works, we basically know that anything that's related to this Mart available to renew file is going to be related to the Mart available to renew table in Snowflake, which is nice, because if we look through here, I'm sure we'll find union of all the charges. This is a comment, right? Yes, we see it's the type comment. So if we look in here, there it is. So this was the comment that was used as a reference to point to this table. And obviously, any one of these references can be pretty esoteric. So what we actually do is we get back 100 or 1,000 of these references. I've changed it back and forth a few times. I can't remember what it's at now. And then we store on the references what tables they're associated with in the Pinecone metadata, so that then we can process all of the references, figure out which results have the highest counts, and then those are the ones that we've decided are the best and the ones we return. And like I said, it's really clean with GitHub, but with Git, because we have this one-to-one relationship. If we go look at one for Notion, it's going to be substantially more gross in a way. Let's look at Notion. So yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll step back and talk about Notion. So Notion is a sort of alternative to the Atlassian suite, I would say. It's, yeah, like Jira Confluence. It is one tool that is both a ticketing system and a documentation hub. It's really just like a free-form wiki, almost. And the way it's structured is a little different, too. It's much more regimented than any of those. Like here, I actually have it open over here. We can take a quick look. So this is a typical Notion sort of page. You can see every time I mouse down this column here, there's a little thing next to like either the LI or the paragraph or the heading or whatever. It's because every entity on the page is its own like discrete chunk. So when you query their APIs, they return each of these things as a separate item. So like it won't just return you the page, it'll return you all of the blocks on the page, which is interesting and actually both helpful and not helpful for chunking. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's catastrophic. But anyway, so you can see with these, we wind up with lots and lots of results off of one reference. And that's because when we got to doing open text rather than the nicely structured Git stuff, I pretty quickly realized that the references can be very far away from the results on the page. Like they could be very close or they could be very far. And because you're dealing with blocks, it could be like 5 blocks away, it could be 50 blocks away, and it could still be relevant. So we ultimately decided to go with every reference on a page is relevant to every table on that page, which is kind of a lot, but it improved the quality of our results enough, just having Notion there, that I never really saw a reason to change it after that. Oh, I am running out of time. All right, let's just speed run through looking at a follow-up question. We decided not to surface the follow-up questions either, because ultimately what you're looking for is results. We don't really want to show you the nuts and bolts of what's going on too much. Let's get my follow-up question query. So you can see here, these are some follow-up questions that it's come up with. Like this was, what is the total amount of all charges and the total of all the total number of charges in the FCT charge table? It's a somewhat relevant question about this data. And then that caused it to return some more of the results that we saw over here. And then ultimately, when it's done enough loops and the LLM is like, okay, this is some good stuff, we're ready to go, it'll just say no follow-up question. And that is what lets the app know to shut it down and start sending responses to the user. So yeah, ultimately that's how it works. I mean, most of the real cool stuff happens in the data ingestion flow in that little sort of chat circle, but I'm not going to show you the prompts because I have to keep some mystery preserved, right? But yeah, ultimately that is Valquery. I just got one more slide here. I'll spare you the graph since we just showed you how Valquery works. Let's talk a little about where we are now. So we actually decided to open source Valquery earlier this year. So at the end of February, Open Valquery was born. If you want to scan the QR code, you can go get it and you can run it locally and do whatever the heck you want with it. It's on a very permissive license. We think there's a lot of use cases for it beyond data analytics too. We could expand it to business intelligence tools, would be a natural fit. Incident forensics has also been brought to my attention as a really good fit. You could sort of comb through your suite and sort of figure out maybe where a problem originated based on people's conversations. If anybody wants to build that out, I'd love to see it. And yeah, we have more or less paused active development on it ourselves for fiscal reasons. So if you want to track me down on LinkedIn, I am readily available. And that's been my talk. Any questions?
Hey,
Oh,
let's give you the mic. Sorry, I lost my mic for a second. If you can, please stand so we can see you on the live stream too. Thank you. Oh, sure. No, you're good.
Right here? Okay.
Thank you.
How does the LLM know that it's done enough? Like, what's that decision?
we have a prompt that basically asks, we continually will add the new information that it's gotten to the prompt, and basically just ask it to be like, okay, we have a prompt that basically preps it for its role, and then we say basically, based on this role and this data and this question, do you think you have enough information to formulate a good answer? And they're smart enough to most of the time figure it out. Yeah, we didn't decide to update it to GPT-4 because this is faster, and our responses are already pretty slow, and they were good enough, so we stuck with it.
Any other? Perfect. If you guys could do me a favor and help me pass this mic, and when you're done with your question, just pass it to the next person or back to me, whichever's.
You mentioned Snowflake for the result source. Does it work for other things like Databricks or like other kind of a data warehouse? And fast follow-up for Notion, like same. Does it work for like maybe Slab, Asana, or anything else?
So that was sort of now that we had the fundamental flow down, sort of the next thing was to build out more and more and more and more and more and more integrations, because obviously the data analytics space is pretty fragmented in terms of what exact productivity stacks people use. That's something I'm hoping the open source community can pick up the slack on. If I was going to do it myself, I would probably pivot to using Meltano. If you're familiar with that, it's a really easy way of just pulling tons of data from tons of different sources with Python. I didn't use any Python for this project because I sort of am a masochist and decided I wanted to do it with all Node, but I would do that differently going back. Yeah. Sorry, what was the follow-up? Okay, the follow-up question was similar. Yeah. So obviously, ideally this would be almost Zapier level of integrations. Yeah.
Any other? Oh, perfect.
Is it Zapier
No,
or Zapier? Anybody know?
It's Zapier, Happier.
Zapier.
That's what I heard.
Zapier.
I just had a question around, so when you go through the RAG and then GAR loop,
Yeah.
are you like caching the files that are good and then discarding the ones that are not relevant, or do you have to continually just refine the search query to get what you want?
So ideally, we're only getting back files that are relevant, because these are the files that we've used our aggregation to decide are the most relevant. The only time we actually discard files is when we decide that they're invalid for some reason, like if they don't have data in them or if they don't exist. We do some checks like that, but that's really what the search and the LLM are there for, is to decide, they're deciding that these files are relevant. Yep.
We have less than a minute left. Let's do one more question.
Hey, you mentioned that you were going to build out more data integrations. It seems like you started out with Snowflake. Why not start out with Databricks? Why did you choose to start out with Snowflake?
Like I said, when we started this project, I was pretty new to analytics, but my impression was that Snowflake is sort of the big player in the space right now. It seems like the most popular choice, so that was why we went with it, ultimately.
Nick, thanks so much. Let's give Nick a round of applause. And we'll get set up for our next speaker. And Nick will be here for networking as well. Okay, very excited about our next speaker. Ron Petty, Principal Consultant at RXM. Ron's going to talk about cloud native artificial intelligence. And without further delay, help me welcome Ron.
Hello, everyone. bringing it up. Is that good? All right. I can't hear it, so you're good. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ron Petty, and I'm going to talk about cloud-native artificial intelligence. Before we get into the details and what's going on in this area, I would like to just start with a demo. So if you want to see the demo up close, that QR code is to a zip file, which has a lab that I'm going to be working through. So you can follow along with that. You can try to look on the screen as well, but that might make it easier. And this presentation is in that zip file as well. So I'm going to switch over to this demo. All right. Okay. All right. So again, in this zip file is this lab, which is going to explain a product called ChatGPT. So I'll talk a little bit about what that is, and then we'll get right into the demo, and then we'll talk more generically what cloud-native artificial intelligence actually represents. So ChatGPT is a tool to act like an SRE staff. So someone who does DevOps, who manages your operations of your clusters. So specifically, as it's in the name, we're talking about Kubernetes. If you don't know what Kubernetes is, and I've talked to some of you earlier today, Kubernetes is basically a distributed operating system. So just like you have Linux for a single machine, or Windows for a single machine, or Mac for a single machine, how do you manage multiple machines and balance their resources, right? At the end of the day, that's what Kubernetes is. And so it's a beast in its own right. And so we usually, at a certain scale, have lots of people to manage it, to customize it and do all these things. And so one of those things is to do observability and to monitor it and make sure that we're doing the right things, looking for failures, and then ideally providing advice on how to fix those things. And then in the long run, of course, is to actually automate those things, right? And do these autocorrective type fixes. So what ChatGPT is a tool developed originally by Alex Smith from Amazon, of which I am not part of the project. And again, I'll get more into the ecosystem in a little bit. I'm just demoing this, then explaining the ecosystem. So him and other people have developed this product, and it comes in a couple of different forms. The simplest one, which is what we'll start with, is a command line tool. You download it, you point it at your cluster, and it does an analysis. So it comes in 2 steps. The first is a codified analysis. And then the second step is using AI, right? And so what's the difference? So the first part is if I'm an SRE or a DevOps type operator, I can actually write down the solution to particular errors, right? You see some error over and over again, you know you got to do steps 1, step 2, step 3 to fix it, right? So that's an example of something that can be codified. The next part is what if you don't actually understand it, right? So you could take an expert and codify hundreds of things, right? And maybe you hand that over to someone else and they actually only understand bits and pieces of that, right? So can we actually take these terse codified solutions and actually expand upon them to explain what's going on, why you would do it, and then give you a suggestion on maybe what to do? Then, of course, the dream is to automate all these things, right? And so that's the goal of ChatGPT. It'll take codified components. So for those who do know a little bit about this world, the example we'll show is we're going to make a pod with an incorrect image. So in other words, it can't download the software, right? You have a typo, it can't find it, right? So you get a standard message with that, and the solution is go fix the label, right, to go get the right thing. So it's pretty simple. But that's the codified part. If you actually never knew that's how it worked, you wouldn't understand what that is. So you would want some better explanation on what that's actually telling us. And that's where the AI, the second step, comes in. And so there's 2 forms here. There's a command line version, which is the easiest, and that's what we're going to start with. And then the second form is what we're actually showing here. This is known as a Kubernetes operator, and all it really means is this. Take my code that was on the command line and go run it as a daemon in the cluster itself. And now it just runs full time, all the time, and it's doing the exact same thing. It's taking data from the cluster, looking for errors, and then reports back to you what's wrong, right? And then from there, you can do what you need to do. So this material, if you do decide to go through it, starts from the very beginning. So all it assumes is you have a virtual machine, and that's it. It goes through, for those who have never done it, install Docker, install Kubernetes, explains along the way what all those things are. We're skipping all this just because we don't have time. We want to get to the GPT part. Okay. All right, so at this point, what we're going to do is start off with, again, installing GPT, the command line version, and seeing how it works. Okay. All right. So I am no magic here. I'm connected to a VM in Amazon. It's just plain old Ubuntu 2204 VM. And it may be a little hard to follow, so I'll just kind of describe what's happening. But again, it's all spelled out in that lab, so you can read it. So this is just downloading it. There's different ways to install GPT, but this happens to be a Debian package. This is actually going to install it. And again, it is just a command line tool. That's it, right? So nice and easy. Has built-in command line completion. So that's what I'll do here. So for those who aren't familiar with Kubernetes and a lot of these tools, they'll have built-in completion, and that's what this is doing. So then you can hit tab for all these subcommands. It's very, very useful, especially when you have lots of tools to deal with. And now we're ready. So there's already a cluster. Again, it's a little hand wavy because we didn't install it from scratch, but here is just showing that Kubernetes is out there. For those who don't know, nodes are, we'll just say that's the machines in the cluster, and then the pods are our applications, right? Just to keep it simple. And so now we're ready to ask what Kate's GPT thinks about our cluster. So we have nothing running, which is what the Git nodes and Git pods are telling us. And Kate's GPT analyze, remember, it's a two-step process. First, it's going through the codified rules. Do you find this error, this error, this error, this error, this error, and gets them all together. The second step is to put that all together, ship it off to OpenAI or to whatever AI you want, and then run the expansion on that, bring that back, and then show you. So that's what it's telling us. It says AI provider not used, so use the explain option to use it. So again, we have no errors right now because we don't have anything running. And it says right here there's no provider. So this is table stakes. This is, we're at the very beginning here. Okay, next is we're going to break it. So now we're actually going to run a pod that will break. And again, for those who don't know what that means, we're going to run a program and we're going to screw it up, is what we're saying. Okay. And right here, hopefully you can see it up there, is run broken pod. This is just the name we're giving it. And then this is the actual thing we're trying to run. So Nginx is a web server, and we're saying give us version 1 ABC, which doesn't exist, right? And so in Kubernetes, the normal way to deal with this is you would just, manually look. And you can see right here, this is the kind of error that you would get. So the image is the glorified tarball that you download to run. It can't find it, and that's the thing we're looking for. So now with that in mind, what does GPT say about this? So again, remember, there's two steps. GPT analyze is doing the hard-coded check for these conditions and see if there's anything wrong. And that's what it found it, right? So the image pull back off. Let me do it one more time. Now it says error image pull. So it's a state machine. So Kubernetes is trying it again and again. It could just be a temporary error, right? So it started off with this image pull back off error, and now it says error image pull. This is the kind of thing that it's looking for. And so now again, if we try to enable AI analysis of this error that it found, it's going to say we haven't configured it, right? So in the case of OpenAI, no big surprise. We need to put in a key to make it work, right? So we're going to do that coming up. Okay. All right. Before we do want to show this. Here's the code. And this is just a part of just trying to demystify some of this so you can do your own research of these tools. So this is the actual analyzer that's what is being codified. So it's a little hard to read, but basically what this is showing us is, and this is Go code for those who don't know Go, it's looking literally for Kubernetes states, right? There's no magic here. Forget about it being Go or anything like that. It's literally looking for a string that says, was the pod scheduled? If it wasn't scheduled, what is the error, right? It's very much just hard coding, looking for conditions, right? Are we crashing, right? That's a Kubernetes message. Are we running? That's a Kubernetes message. And then ultimately, there's things that it will report on ChatGPT, for example, error image pool. So again, if it found that condition, it's considered an error, it'll report on it in the step 1 analysis. And again, the step 2 is take that analysis and ship it off to an AI provider that you configure, which is what we're going to do now. Okay, so it talks about the code. Okay, so comment on this, the AI behind the scenes. We're going to do OpenAI here. This project is still fairly new. It has the ability to do local AI as well. We'll just say it was a lot more challenging to set up and keep it stable than just using OpenAI. So for this demo, we're using OpenAI, but you can get it to succeed using alternatives to that. Okay, and so all we need for OpenAI is a key. So I'm just going to show what it looks like for those of you who maybe have never done it. Get an account, log in, you fund your account. That's what this is showing us here. You have to pay for how much you're willing to put up. There's limits and all those kinds of good things. And once you do that, it's pretty straightforward. You just go over here to the left, make an API key. There are some various authorization things you can do, read versus write, as far as their API is concerned. It's not that featureful, but you have basic controls there. You can then make the actual API key. Kind of looks like this, 128 characters or whatever it is. So you just need to copy that, and that's all you need. So now, assuming I've done that, right? We could take a look at what ChatGPT thinks about this. So again, it has support for different providers. Out of the box, it's with OpenAI. That's probably going to change. I think the general consensus is people don't want that to be the default, but it happens to, because of the API standard and just ease of use, it just happens to still be that. So this may very well change to local AI at some point. But you can see there's other API support as well for their keys. Okay. All right, so here's where we actually do it. Let me put it up to the top. So this command is going to basically say, I want to use OpenAI as my backend, and because they have multiple models, that's part of the API calls. We're telling it which one we want to use. And then here's where we would put in the key. And yes, there are config files and the like to do it that way if you wish. And let me just take one of these keys that I did before. And now, if we list it again, we'll see here that we've got this set up, active OpenAI. Sorry, scrolling. Okay. Now, remember, again, two-step process. So if we do it where we don't use an AI agent, it's just doing that static analysis, and we still are informed that we're not using AI, but we do get the basic static analysis here. So now to use the AI, all you got to do, again, is use the explain option. And again, this will send it off. And there's the actual expanded response from OpenAI. Now, we won't have time, but you could imagine could I take this error, something like this, and go to OpenAI myself and say, tell me what's wrong. You'll come back with something similar to this. But the point is, this is being purpose-built. It'll take advantage of all those abilities and be more focused, right? So just something to consider, right? What would you do by hand versus what these tools do? So that's the basic. So again, it's looking for hundreds of issues in a cluster and giving us advice. Now, it turns out it can do more than that. So the next step is what's called ChatGPT integrations. So the integrations are other tools that do static analysis. So the one we're going to demo here is called Trivy. So Trivy is a tool, had nothing to do with ChatGPT. You install it. It also analyzes Kubernetes and all the things that's out there and everything you configured and tells you what you're doing right and wrong, right? Now, Trivy happens to originally come out of vulnerability scanning, but they do a bunch of other things as well. And so a little bit of overlap in some regard, but that's not the point. It does a lot more than what we've seen. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So right now, out of the box, it supports Trivy, Prometheus, and AWS. So what are these? Trivy's the security scanner. The Prometheus integration here isn't installing Prometheus. So if you're unfamiliar with Prometheus, Prometheus is a tool that scrapes in metrics, right? So the theory here is ChatGPT will ask Prometheus in PromQL, which is its language, and say, hey, buddy, what's looking good and bad out here, right? So just another source of information. And then the AWS integration here actually has to do with support of EKS and the just general Amazon ecosystem for Kubernetes type tooling. Okay, so here we'll activate it. It's pretty simple. Again, it's built in, didn't have to do anything else. This, no smoke and mirrors here. This has been built in. And what it's doing is it's going to basically to Trivy's website, downloading it, kicks it off, and in general, it's just Trivy if you had installed it yourself, right? They took the next step and to talk to it, to get this information, and then to send it to your AI provider. All right, so that takes a moment, and we'll let this run for just a second. So Trivy's doing its thing. Trivy is running and it's scanning the cluster, looking for problems. And so you're going to see things succeed, things fail. This is all standard tooling as far as cloud native technology is concerned. So this takes a minute because you could probably guess there is lots of problems in the world to scan for. Oh no, home killed. Getting close. All right, might be far enough. Let's see if this worked. Of course it worked. All right, before we see the results, one more part here, integration. So ChatGPT has categories of those static analysis. So it just helps us because, just like any kind of QA or unit testing process, you may not want to do all the tests all the time. So they call them filters. And you can see here, there's ones that are on, which are active, and then ones that are off. Just this is the subset that they've decided. And then you can see here, when we added Trivy, it added these ones as well. And so again, Trivy's kind of claim to fame is a vulnerability scanner, right? So you can basically turn Trivy on and off. Here it's going to be on just because that's the default behavior. Okay, again, back to the two-step analysis. You don't have to do it as two steps. I'm just doing it to be pedantic. Again, static analysis, we saw before it was just a label was missing. But now you can see, there's 11 things now And these new ones are from Trivy. So CacheGPT went to Trivy and said, hey, what was your analysis, right? So this is Trivy output, basically. The next step is, can we send it to the AI provider, get some kind of expansion on that? Explain. So there's more to package up into format and to deal with. So this is going off to OpenAI. And you can see here, I mean, it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of stuff. But the point being is if I can find one here. Here's a config issue, describes it, gives a solution, right? So we're not going to worry about any particular problem, but that's the idea, right? And so again, it's meant to, this isn't auto ML in a sense where it's fully automated, but it's getting there, and that's really the goal, right? Is can we start with the cookie cutter things, the hard-coded things, and start to automate that? And that's where this is leading, okay? We have 10 minutes left, so I'm just gonna talk for a minute what is left in here if you choose to do it versus showing it, because we'll go a little faster. And that's the second way to install this. So what we've seen is a command line tool sitting out of the cluster. It's talking to Kubernetes to find things. It's talking to Trivy to get information. This approach, this next approach, is called a Kubernetes operator. And for those who don't know what that means, it means make it into a server and then run it forever, right? Just install it in Kubernetes. It just becomes a program that continuously runs. And if you do that, instead of us doing that cube or CacheGPT analyze to get the results, we do a different command, and I'll just show you what that command is. A lot of detail just explaining what's going on. And then, yeah, here it is. So once it's running, instead of saying CacheGPT, we can actually just use regular Kubernetes. Oh, man, sorry, double click there. We can use kubectl. So that's the standard command line tool for Kubernetes. And you can see here that it's CacheGPT has been integrated with it. And now there's a new type called a result, which you can see and get the same response. So now we can automate it into your CI pipelines, your monitoring tools, right? And that's the idea here, okay? All right, so again, the next step, of course, would be is instead of using OpenAI, to do it with local AI. But again, that's a bit of a beast at the moment. All right, so going back to the presentation, a couple slides here, and then we'll do questions. All right, so what is cloud native artificial intelligence? So I am part of a volunteer effort at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, and we have a working group, so it's the CNCF AI working group. And one of the things goals of the group is to kind of figure out what is going on with Kubernetes, again, which is this distributed scheduler, and artificial intelligence in general, right? So there's kind of two camps. There are people who want to use Kubernetes to host things like their own open AI, right? And then there is things like CacheGPT, which is the other side, where we're actually using AI to make Kubernetes better, right? So that's the two ships in the night kind of passing each other. And so we're still working on what does it mean, what's the ecosystem. AI is a big world. You've got entire tool chains like your Databricks. You've got entire other open source things like the Apache projects, right? All the DAG tools, those things. So where does this fit in? So cloud native artificial intelligence is an extension of cloud native. What is cloud native? There is an official definition, just highlighted here in purple here. The main part here, cloud native tech empowers organizations to build and run scalable applications in modern dynamic environments. This is Kubernetes, right? We don't have much time, we'll just say it. This is Kubernetes. It's the system of choice that we're building around. It's not gonna be used for all things AI. It's not even used for all things web serving, but there's a huge ecosystem around it. AI, there's lots of ways to describe what AI is. right? So intelligent machines, we'll just leave it at that. So what's the combinations of these things? And so the point being is can we use cloud native tooling to make AI easier, right? And so what does that mean? How do we do that? So you could read about it. This white paper just came out 2 weeks ago at KubeCon in Paris, one of the authors, and basically we tried to boil the ocean on what is going on in Kubernetes and the ecosystem. We partnered with lots of people and efforts from the cloud native side to hardware engineering and Intel and NVIDIA, and try to boil that ocean, like what is going on, right? We even though Kubernetes lives out of the CNCF, there's still plenty going on outside of there, right? And so we're trying to capture that in this white paper. So take a look at that. The URL is nice and long, and they're in the deck. Lots of problems to be solved. So Kubernetes and cloud native has problems around scaling, right? That's typically where most people run into problems. AI does not help that. Right? So if you're trying to scale AI solutions, you've got two complex things coming together, right? And so it's not solved today, but people are working on solutions to that aspect of scaling and making it easy to host these kinds of tools. I think, yeah, we'll skip it. There's other slides here. We're just going to go right to the end. What could you do to learn more about this? So first and foremost, you can join the CNCF. You could join the AI working group. We need all kinds of people. We need people from just learning how to use these tools because they'll have a certain perspective. We need people who are building the tools, right? So it's a whole community. So there's plenty of room for everybody. So the more we can get in there, different views, the better. There's other, as it mentions here, there's other groups you could learn with as well. Of course, we've got the AI user group. Happy to be here. But there's plenty of tools out there you can volunteer and join. So there's plenty to do in the cloud native space. But again, if you have any questions, please ask me.
Let's start Q&A. Any questions for Ron?
This is more of a comment slash a point, just to get some thoughts on this. So just for context, I've been involved in the development of Kubernetes since the early days. So concepts like network policy, service meshes, identity, a lot of these concepts my teams have led, developed, built into Kubernetes. And obviously K8s has gotten so much more complex today. Coming back to this, what K8s GPT is doing, fundamentally it's analyzing your cluster and giving you, okay, this is what you may want to go fix. What I've observed over the years is that people start with a overly complex design because they don't know any better. Ingress to kube proxy to DNS to network, there's like a million abstractions they use, and they don't realize that they don't need to design the cluster with all of them.
That's right.
So any thoughts on, I don't know if there's any, I haven't looked at K8s GPT in a few months. Is there any, first, your thoughts? And second, is there any work going on stepping back from the, here's the application, but maybe you need to simplify the overall design to begin with?
That's right. I am in your camp. Yeah, so Kubernetes, kind of said at the beginning, is a beast. It's easy to go wrong right out of the gate with the various abstractions. So will something like K8s GPT maybe even help that, right? Start to show like, hey, it's duplicative in some controls and abstractions. Can we remove that? I would hope so. It's not there today, right? Because it is, like you say, it's codified, right? And then we're expanding. So it's early days on that. Will it get to semantic analysis and go from there? I hope so. I don't think we're there yet, but I do hope so.
Ron, anything else interesting you learned at KubeCon in Paris?
The two hot items, it's AI, of course, and security and where they overlap. That's, there's plenty of other things going on, medical and other things, but I will say when it comes to automation, security is really something that can be automated. So if you're looking for projects, or you're looking for things to build on, security is definitely an area that's going to keep getting a lot of eyeballs.
Okay, let's take another question. And if you can, just help me pass the mic, and thanks very much.
You got a short leash there, I get it. So a question, in the first part of your presentation, when you're talking about like the codified like system, maybe it was a function of the like specific error that you generated, but to me it really felt like, oh, there was an error that got spit out by your Kubernetes system, and now this system is like going in and analyzing it, and it's reporting back, it's like, yes, here's the error. So what else, like, is it doing anything different if maybe there's, because you might have 20, 50, 1,000 errors, like, right, at a various time. Like, is there something that's happening, there's something else that's happening there when, like, when you get up to real scale? Or, like, beyond just, because to me it felt like, oh, we're reporting the error, but it can already do that with Splunk or whatever.
That's right. That's right. Yep, great question. So maybe paraphrase. We have basic codified analysis, and then we're just expanding on it. What about a deeper meta-analysis between all these issues? Maybe there's a bigger issue that's causing all these issues, right? It's not there yet, but that is being discussed. That's kind of that next level of reasoning. And I would argue that's probably true of most AI tools. The reasoning aspects are not there yet, right? But yeah, great observation. It's not there yet, but that's something that needs to happen.
And then follow up, is there a discussion within the project, clearly probably not in place right now, but talking about taking like an agent-based approach, give something the ability to be like, oh, here are errors that are consistent with, we don't have enough resources dedicated to this and we're just getting overflow from a large user spike. I just need to go apportion more, I need to authorize more.
That's right.
Like bots, like can it just take those actions for us, ideally?
Yeah, great question. CaseGPT, not today, but as you say, people are considering it, yes.
All right, let's give Ron a round of applause. Thank you so much, Ron. And we have our final speaker we're getting set up for. We have Ulric Musset, founder of Marblism. The title of Ulric's talk is Generate SaaS from a Single Prompt in 1 minute. So we'll time it. We'll see if it is 1 minute. And, all right, without further delay, let's hear from Ulric.
Hey, hi everyone. Super happy to be here with you, and yeah, thank you, Cyril and Jackson for the invitation. I really enjoy the talk, by the way, because we are fighting with Amazon on our Kubernetes to create all these applications that we generate. So it would be super useful to, the project that we just saw. So my name is Ulric. I'm the founder of Marblism. So Marblism is a platform to generate application from a single prompt. So essentially, you go on our website and you describe your application. So, it could be a SaaS, it could be a social network, a marketplace, any kind of complex software that is not like a static website or a landing page. And so you go on our website and you type what you want to build, right? So you can see here it could be a SaaS to manage your contract, a SaaS to manage your expenses. We built this as well, which is a marketplace for pools to find pools in New York, which is a bit strange. But anyway, so here you can see some few apps as well. So we recreated a Twitter. We recreated a project management app like Asana called Asana. And yeah, so in this talk, I just want to show you how it works, like in practice, and then tell you a little bit more as well about what's under the hood and how it works with like the AI, etc. But before that, I just quickly want to tell you why we are building Marblism. And essentially, we are building the product we would have dreamed of having when we started all of our software projects in the past. I learned how to code when I was really young, and I did like plenty of different projects and applications. So my first project was a community for readers and writers to share novels. Then I did an online video game. Then I did a Tinder for fashion, which was quite ridiculous because I was literally the most unfashionable person at uni. And so we did all of this project. We made all the dumbest mistake you can make as a founder. Like I was fighting with my co-founder on the logo, on the color scheme. We spent like 6 months building a product, releasing to the public without talking to users. I mean, we did everything. And eventually, like our last startup worked pretty well. That was called Vauban, and it was an SPV and fund infrastructure platform. So it was an easy way to launch a venture capital fund. And so we got acquired 2 years ago by Carta, like the cap table company. And essentially with my co-founder, we wanted to do another startup. So we were going through our list of ideas, right, for this next startup. And we were just a bit like frustrated with how you start projects. Like you need to pick up your design system, you need to create your authentication, to set up your backend, to set up your front end, to connect everything together, to build your first features, etc. And it could take weeks or months, right, before you can launch a product. And between the time I started software development, so I was 12, and the time I exited my first startup, I was 29. So that's 17 years of trying to build products people may like. And so we were thinking, how can we shorten this timeline, right? So people can launch their ideas and iterate on their application faster. And so that's how we created Marblism. So let's try it out right now. So I'm gonna go on. There is an AI for that. They've just launched like a request for startups where people can post, request of tools they would love to do. And so we're gonna. There was one I really like. Yeah, the AI fairy tale generator for kids. So we're gonna try to do this. And so I'm going to go to Marblism. Yeah, is it big enough? So we're going to call it fairy tale. It's going to be a SaaS. And here we're going to input the project description. So it's going to be an AI fairy tale generator for kids. And right now we have 2 themes. We have light or dark mode. So we're going to do light. And then we click next. And so the first step here, what is doing is that it's analyzing your requirements, and so it's gonna rewrite your prompt and split your prompt into different user stories as well. And the second thing that it's gonna do is check that we can actually do your app. For example, if you had asked for a crypto exchange like Binance, it would have told you, listen, right now we don't have a blockchain module, so it's not going to work. And so here you see like the AI basically rewrote our application. So an app that generates fairy tales for kids using AI. As a user, I can input keywords. I can view the generated fairy tale, etc. Okay, so we press next. And now it's generating our backend essentially, so the database schema. So here what we expect is to see like a table for user, a table for fairy tales, maybe a table for images as well if we want to save the fairy tale. And so while it's loading, I can maybe explain what's under the hood. So essentially this is how it works. Because you've got a lot of startups, right, in the code generation space, and most startup their approach is to build like a very generalistic AI, right? That can code in Python, that can code in JavaScript, in C++, everything. And it's very hard to do. We took the opposite approach of essentially narrowing down like a very specific framework. And so our first framework that we pick is to create application in this framework. So React for the front end, and Node for the backend with a database and a couple of modules. And so essentially what the AI does really is to take this template and customize it for the end application. So for example, if it requires an authentication, it's going to put the authentication inside. And we realized it was a really good approach because essentially you don't want your AI to generate your authentication or your permission access level. Like you want it to be super stable, and you want it to be secure, etc. So you don't want any mistake on, on your Stripe integration, on your authentication. So that's why like using this kind of modularized approach works pretty well. And then the second thing is that essentially we want to enable developers to create their own template. So for example, if you wanted to generate app in Python as a backend, you would create a template for that, and then our kind of orchestration layer could work on this template to spin up new apps with a Vue front end and Python backend. So that's kind of how it works under the hood. And so let's see where we are with our apps. Okay, cool. So 6 tables have been generated. We have users, fairy tale, keywords, favorite as well if we want to, I guess put some fairy tales in favorites, and an image as well. Okay, cool. So we press next, and now it's going to generate all the pages in our application. So we're going to expect, pages to generate a fairy tale, pages to display all your fairy tales, like this type of things. And so we're gonna wait. Okay, cool. 11 pages have been generated. So we can see we have the login, register, generate a fairy tale, view fairy tale, etc. And so here you can edit as well, like the description of each page. So if you wanted, for example, a very particular user experience for this page, like that's where you would extend the description. And then we're going to click next. Okay. And now it's generating the code base. So it takes like 5 good minutes plus 5 minutes of deployment. So what I did was I created this app just an hour before, so that it would be faster time to pizza. So it's exactly the same app, like fairy tale generator. And we can go to my app. And we have an online code editor as well if you want to dive into the code base and make changes by yourself, or you can add your GitHub as well to access the code. So let's go to my app. There is a bit of loading time. That's why we need the Kubernetes. The ChatGPT for Kubernetes, I think, will help. Okay, we are nearly there. Okay. Can everyone see it? Yeah. So that's my app. So I can do explore fairy tale. So this is kind of the fairy tales created by the community. We create as well for each app some dummy data as well, so people can can have a better sense of what the app looked like in the end. If it was all empty, like you don't really know what to do. So this is like dummy data generated by AI. So we can see that you can you can see all the fairy tales. You can upvote as well one and put one in your favorite. This is all the fairy tales that you created, as a user, and we can see that all the logic work. Basically, if I wanted to delete one, like the backend works, all the connections are made. And let's try to create one. So we can say the princess, and I don't have a lot of inspiration. Sorry, guys. So an epic tale about a prince trying to save a princess in a very far away galaxy. And we click generate. And so here, let's see if it works. It's supposed to generate something. So for example, here I think what's missing is that there is no loading, okay, perfect, it works. So we have our fairy tale, once upon a time, etc. But I'm not going to read it. and it generated a cool picture as well, for your kids to see. Okay, that's pretty cool. So I can save the fairy tale here, and I have it here. And then I can see it in my fairy tale. Can I see it somewhere? Maybe explore fairy tales. Yeah, okay, it's here. So you see, like, all the logic basically works. Then you can as well iterate on your app. So here I could say, for example, in create your fairy tale, all the logic works, but maybe we wanted like a loading button, right, to see that it's actually loading. So here I could say, hey, add a loading state when the user click on generate. So add a loading state on the button when the user clicks on generate. And so you can make changes to your application on the fly. Essentially what we see people doing for big changes, like to create new features or to add a new page, like they will prompt, but because it takes like 1-2 minutes for the prompt to come back with the end result, if you want to make a tiny change like that, most people would just open the code base and do it by themselves. So we need to improve on the time it takes to code, basically. And so let's see. But if anyone has, any question as well while it's while it's loading.
Would you like to start Q&A?
Yeah, we can start Q&A. I guess it was a quick demo. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Ulric? Don't be shy. Perfect. And just if you can, please stand so we can see you a little better, including on the live stream.
So the templates and the modules that you're including, are you doing any RAG or fine tuning on I guess you're just using OpenAI's models, right? So are all the kind of examples already in the OpenAI? Is it already in their model and you're just calling it?
Correct. So essentially if you try to use AI to generate 500 files in a code base, it's not going to work. Like the AI is going to deviate way too much and you're not going to have like a very coherent code base. So what we do is that we start from a template of like 300, 500 files, and then this template get customized and via a RAG as well and we use OpenAI, yeah. So that's how it works. So it's a combination of AI plus templates that enable us to really come to like a enterprise-ready code base with like an authentication, some permission, role access level, etc. That if you had only used ChatGPT, it would have never worked. Like it would have had way too much deviation.
Thank you.
I got a question. What if, Ulric, what if you wanted to, for some reason or another, you wanted to add your own loader manually? Maybe you have a component you like already or styled somehow. What would that process generally be like using this tool?
To integrate like your own, let's say, design system or like anything? Yeah. Okay. So the loading button works. So I'm going to save the changes. So right now it only works with our specific design system. So we use Ant design as a design system. So if you wanted to use your own one, for now it doesn't work. Like we want to, I think what would happen is that you would need to create another template that is specific to your design system or that is specific to like Material UI, for example, if you wanted to do that. So for now, yeah, you can't include your own.
More questions for Ulric? If you guys could help me just pass the mic. Thanks so much.
Somewhat of a similar question, but around after users create an application, is it like Bubble where they're locked in that they can only work, only access it within your interface, or do they get access to the source code?
That's a really good question. So essentially, you own the source code, so you can see it. You can see it here. like you can just put your GitHub username, and then we give you access to the code base, and you are free to clone it, fork it, and do whatever you want. And we have as well an online code editor, so a bit similar to Replit, where if people want to play around with it, they can just launch a code editor, so you don't have to do any kind of setup on your computer or anything like that. But no, you are the owner of the code.
Any other questions for Ulric? We have time. Let me pass you the mic.
So if you have an existing app already, could you load it into this?
If you have an existing code base, can you use this system?
Yeah, exactly.
For now, no. It only works within the template and the code base that we create. But we are looking to implement a system, where you can import your existing code base, and then it can add features on top of it.
Ulric, question. Let's go to the audience first.
Could you speak more about the use case generation?
Like what type of application you can generate?
How are those generated, or what goes into? Are you just asking OpenAI to generate the use cases, or doing any work on that?
It's a good question. I mean, we use essentially OpenAI to generate the code, but because we know the code base by heart, with all these different modules, these templates, etc., we can add way more context into the prompt, and that's why it's gonna produce a better application that if you had just started on ChatGPT and ask for a full back-end, front-end database application, it wouldn't have been a really good result if you had done that directly on ChatGPT. So it's because we have all the context of the application that we can give the right context at the right moment to OpenAI, and that's why it can create a better result.
So this application that you just created, the fairy tale one, it worked, right? I did see something about testing. Are you testing the application as it's been built, make sure it's working, or how do you ensure that the final product works?
It's a good question. So essentially, we test the application to make sure that there is no compilation errors. So we can guarantee that all the apps can be launched and there is no compilation errors. But that doesn't mean that there will be all the features, fully implemented exactly like you asked. And so that's why, we have this prompt where you can iterate on your app. So sometimes, if it doesn't work, you prompt, when I try to save my fairy tale or whatever, I have an error. Can you fix it? But we run and we test the application in the background to make sure that at least there is no compilation errors or blue screen or red screen.
Might be a trick question, but can you use this to generate a Marblism clone with a couple of templates?
Can the machine that builds the machine can be used to build the machine that builds the machine? No, I think it will be too complex for now. But I think it's not. I think we should try. I mean, I'm not going to try right now because I can't guarantee that it's going to work. But I think we should try. Maybe you can get to a state, you can get to the 90%, and you need to spend some time on the last 10% to make sure it works. But that's essentially our goal with Marblism is really to take you to the 90% finish line, and then you spend your time on the 10% critical to your app. So it's about saving people's time. It's not really about having a fully finished product ready to launch in 1 minute. It's really making you 10 times more productive.
Ulric, sorry if I missed this. So Marblism generates a SaaS in what language? So you attach your GitHub. What language are you working in?
So everything is in TypeScript. So it's React on the front end in TypeScript and Node.js on the back end in TypeScript as well. And it's completely free to use as well if you want to play around. Essentially, it's pretty cute. But it works with marbles. So you buy some marbles, but everyone starts with like a starter kit of 100 marbles. And if you need more, you can talk to me there, and I can give you some marbles discreetly.
Any other questions for Ulric? Perfect.
Yeah, speaking of marbles, do you mind sharing like how many tokens you guys use per app generation? Are you guys using 3.5 or 4?
So we use GPT-4. We process, I think we are at 10 million token a day of usage, between 10 to 100 million when we have a lot of traffic. And then one application costs us around $1 to make. So yeah, that's about that. Yeah.
Ulric, are there any other, you mentioned GPT-4, have you experimented with any other LLMs lately that you're excited about, such as Mistral, Large, for example?
I really like Grok, which is not exactly a model, but more like a platform to run the models like faster. Because you see in our example, when I try to make a change, it would take like 2 minutes, right? And it's a bit frustrating. Like you want it to be quick, especially if it doesn't work like all the time. So you want to have a quick feedback, like max 10 seconds will be ideal. And so with Grok, it's so fast that I think we can decrease the waiting time to like maybe 10 or 20 seconds. But the problem is that Grok only works on Llama and Mistral, and for code generation, like the quality is not there yet. But hopefully, in 6 months, if this open source language catch up, I think it's going to be good. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think Llama 3 is in the pretty far along in the pipeline. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, let's hope for the best.
Yeah. What else? What do you think the most, within reason? What's your guess at the most complicated sort of SaaS application Marblism can currently generate?
There was one cool app that that 2 founders did. It was a SaaS for doctors to record their patients' calls and then summarize them with AI. And so they are trying to launch this startup for doctors. So I thought it was a pretty good use case. But yeah, it's very funny to see what people type. Like it's so diverse, it's so broad, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
And in terms of licensing, anything you generate, anything a user generates is theirs with Marblism?
Correct. Yeah, like they own the code fully, so they can just generate the code, leave the platform, never go back. I should not say that, but yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's a super strong product, super impressive. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give Ulric a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, just a few announcements. If you want to show some support, you can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, say you were here. If you're interested in other events similar to this, check out our meetup page. We have at least, 5 events posted already with 3 speakers apiece. Same format, same location, check it out. For example, we're doing this again in exactly 4 weeks. AI for Developers 13 on May 1st. If you look at the lineup on meetup.com, which is posted, you'll notice 3 speakers. One of the speakers is from Meta, and they have an LLM called Llama 2. It's possible they'll have Llama 3 on May 1st or before, around then. I don't know. This is just a guess. I'm not sure. How would I know? What else? AI for marketers in 2 weeks, April 17th, and AI for designers on April 24th. Check out those lineups. There's a lot of crossover, so if you're interested in the topics, please join us. They're all on our meetup page. Oh yeah, one more announcement from me before we start open mic. If you're interested or you know someone interested in a sponsorship sales position, we're hiring. So please get in touch. You can chat with me, or you can have them send their email to Eileen@bemyapp.com. So that's the sales position. And with that, let's start open mic announcements before we start networking. Don't be shy, just come straight up, and you guys can queue up right here. This is by request, and it's only a flash in the pan. We only have a moment. So come on up, and let's keep the continuity going. Ron's first.
Okay, I put on another hat. I'm actually the chapter president of the Internet Society here in San Francisco. In 2 months, month and a half, it's going to be the 50th anniversary of the internet. And for us, that is TCP/IP and company. We're looking for volunteers to help put on the event. It's going to range from helping people get to their tables, but to the point, several of the attendees, this is the 50th year anniversary. They're elderly, will need some help. There's also going to be lots of cool talks and other things to do. So we're looking for volunteers. It's a Sunday, Monday at Stanford, and then at the Computer History Museum in mid-May. So if you're interested, come find me, and appreciate the help.
Thanks so much, Ron. Who's next? Come on up, don't be shy. And the link, please stand right about here so the LinkedIn live stream can also hear you.
Hey everyone, I just want to share a VS Code extension I launched today. It's called Copilot Context. It's a developer tool to increase productivity and improve the code suggestions that GitHub Copilot suggests. So please check it out. It's called Copilot Context on VS Code Marketplace.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aditya, and this is just a general PSA that I am looking for a co-founder for my startup. So I'm working on this platform called paymefomyai.com. So it's basically a tool where you can, monetize your chatbots, which are similar to like GPTs, except that OpenAI is doing like revenue share. So I'm trying to disrupt that with direct subscriptions or payments for credits. So yeah, if you think you might be interested in it, just check it out, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's called paymefomyai.com. Thanks.
Thanks, Aditya. Perfect announcement, example. And please come on up.
Hi, my name is Janak. I'm building a library for multimodal models, which makes it easy to integrate and switch out multimodal models. Think of LangChain for multimodal models. So if you're building with multimodal models or doing something related to that, happy to chat. Come talk to me. I would love to hear about your experience. I'll probably be hanging out around the kitchen area for another hour. So happy to chat. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm help my friend to shout out for a AI event in this May in San Francisco. It's called Gen AI Summit San Francisco 2024. You can check it, and it's the end of May, and we'll have like speakers from NVIDIA, from OpenAI, Croc, and all those kind of like very hot companies. So I have a QR code here. So if you're interested, just Google the name or come to me for this QR code as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anyone else with an announcement? I think we could do one more. Just introduce yourself before networking. Anyone? Everyone shy? Okay, well, this is by request, okay? This is by your request. And we do this every time. So if you want to come up next time, don't be shy. You want to think about it in advance. I get it. But with that, I think we should go ahead and get started. And let's do some networking, meet each other, build community, enjoy some pizza. LinkedIn live stream. Thanks for sticking with us, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.